Welcome to the Luxury Retail Market Podcast.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, so imagine just for a second that you're the CEO of a century-old heritage fashion house.
Hmm.
Like you and your predecessors have spent decades meticulously crafting this pristine brand image, right?
Oh, absolutely. Decades of total control.
Exactly. You control the supply, you master the illusion of scarcity, and you basically command this incredible amount of pricing power. You dictate what the trends are, and the consumer just follows.
That's the traditional playbook, yeah.
Right. But suddenly you wake up to find that your biggest, most aggressive, and honestly fastest growing competitor isn't the rival fashion house across the street in Paris or Milan.
No, it's definitely not them anymore.
Your biggest competitor is, well, it's you. Specifically, it's the products you already sold 10, 20, or even 30 years ago, and they're now just flooding back into the market.
It's wild. It is a completely unprecedented dynamic in the history of luxury commerce. I mean, historically, a brand's relationship with a product just ended the very second the client walked out of the boutique doors with the shopping bag.
Transaction complete. See you next season.
Exactly. But now, those past creations are actively competing against the current season's inventory for the exact same consumer dollars.
And that dynamic right there is the foundation of today's deep dive. We are bringing you a comprehensive strategy case study on the secondary market for luxury goods. Because this space is, it's fundamentally rewriting the rules of the entire industry.
It really is.
So our core mission for you today, the central question we are going to explore from every possible angle is this. Should luxury brands enter the secondhand market or not?
Right. And if they do decide to step into the fray, what exactly is the most effective approach? Because, are the profit margins actually attractive enough to justify the effort?
Or is it just a defensive maneuver to protect brand equity?
Well, to answer that central question, we need a structured approach. So we'll be using a combination of the market sizing framework and the market study framework.
Makes sense.
Yeah, first we have to look outward at the external factors, right? Like analyzing the sheer quantifiable size of the overall market. We need to investigate the third-party competitors who have capitalized on this void.
And getting inside the shifting psychology of today's consumer, which is fascinating.
Totally. Then we turn the lens inward to examine the internal factors, like how a brand's operations, its pristine image, and its current product offerings are challenged by this new reality.
And we promise we won't leave you hanging with just theoretical analysis. By the end of this deep dive, we are going to deliver a concrete strategy recommendation and a highly tactical implementation plan.
We'll show you exactly how a brand can re-engineer its internal architecture to survive this shift.
So let's start with the sheer math of the threat. Or the opportunity, depending on how you look at it, I guess. We really need to talk about market sizing. Because if I'm a luxury executive looking at my quarterly reports, I need to know exactly how much capital is changing hands totally outside of my control.
Oh, the figures are genuinely staggering. I mean, if we look at the data from Bain & Company and the Boston Consulting Group, who, they act as the premier quantitative barometers for the luxury sector.
Gold standard for data, yeah.
Right. The growth trajectory looks less like a standard retail curve and way more like a tech startup's hockey stick growth.
So let's establish a baseline. Back in 2019, before global supply chains fractured and consumer habits shifted, the secondhand luxury market was already a formidable force.
It's already massive.
Yeah, it was valued at approximately 26 billion euros.
Which, just to put it in perspective for you listening, is already an incredible amount of money. I mean, 26 billion euros is basically the GDP of a small nation.
And it's entirely generated by people buying and selling items that are, by definition, used. But that was just the baseline, right?
Precisely. Because then we enter the pandemic era. Supply chains halted, boutiques closed, but consumer desire, that did not wane at all. In fact, it kind of intensified.
People were sitting at home, scrolling through their phones.
Exactly. Sitting at home with disposable income and nowhere to wear new clothes, but an intense desire to acquire something. So by 2021, the secondary market soared to 33 billion euros.
Wow.
Fast forward to 2024, and that number hit an estimated 48 billion euros. And if we look at the projections for 2025, we are crossing the 50 billion euro threshold.
50 billion euros. And we aren't talking about thrift store dynamics here.
No, not at all.
We are talking about slick, highly digitized, authenticated global commerce. But the macro forecast from BCG is even more startling, isn't it?
It really is. They project that if you zoom out to include the broader secondhand fashion and premium market, we are looking at a space expected to reach between $320 billion and $360 billion by 2030.
The absolute dollar value is massive. But I feel like the real metric that should command the attention of every luxury board of directors is the growth rate.
Spot on. The broader secondhand market is expanding at an annual rate of about 10%.
10%. And the primary first-hand luxury market is growing at, what, roughly a third of that pace?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the macroeconomic climate, primary luxury generally hovers around a 3 to 4% growth rate, which means the secondary market is growing 3 times faster than the primary market.
Wow. If I'm sitting in the C-suite, that multiple is absolutely terrifying. It actually reminds me of the secondary ticket market in the music industry.
Yeah, that's a great comparison.
Right. Like for years, the primary ticket sellers just ignored the scalpers, thinking it was this fringe, slightly unsavory element. Then suddenly, platforms like StubHub institutionalized the secondary market, and the primary sellers realized they were losing out on hundreds of millions in arbitrage.
Exactly.
If the secondhand luxury market is growing 3 times faster, the heritage brands are essentially sitting on the sidelines watching someone else monetize their life's work. It's like a runaway train, and they're just watching someone else drive it.
That is the perfect parallel. The brands are watching a parallel economy boom, and it's one that relies entirely on their proprietary intellectual property, their centuries of refined craftsmanship.
And the brand equity they spent billions in marketing to build.
Right. Yet they aren't capturing a single cent of that secondary transaction. But to truly grasp the mechanics of this 50 billion euro market, we have to unpack what is actually inside the boxes being shipped around the world, because the market is not evenly distributed across all product categories.
Well, sure. A vintage silk scarf does not trade with the same velocity or value as, say, a mechanical watch.
Far from it. When we segment that 50 billion euros, hard luxury completely dominates the landscape. We are talking about fine watches and high jewelry.
Okay.
These two categories alone make up roughly 80 to 85% of total secondhand luxury sales.
Over 80%. So if we really break that down, why is there such a massive disproportionate dominance for watches and jewelry compared to, I don't know, a runaway coat from a famous designer's breakthrough season?
It really comes down to the fundamental physics of the materials and the historical economics of the product. Hard luxury is defined by intrinsic, tangible material value. You're dealing with 18-karat gold, platinum, diamonds, and highly complex mechanical steel movements.
Right. The raw materials alone have high value.
Exactly. And these materials are incredibly resilient. They do not degrade from exposure to sunlight, friction, or humidity in the way that a delicate cashmere sweater or a silk dress will, or even a premium calfskin leather shoe inevitably will.
So a well-maintained mechanical watch from the 1970s not only functions exactly as it did 50 years ago, but it physically looks largely identical.
Yeah. And a diamond doesn't age. A flawless diamond from 1920 is indistinguishable from a flawless diamond mined in 2020. Because the physical degradation is minimal, the perceived value remains incredibly stable.
That makes a lot of sense.
Furthermore, you have to consider the cultural infrastructure. There is a deep, historically entrenched culture of collecting, trading, and auctioning watches and jewelry that has existed for centuries.
Right. Auction houses.
Exactly. The secondary market for watches didn't start with the internet. It started in the auction houses of Geneva and London hundreds of years ago.
So the consumer has always been comfortable with the idea that a watch has a second, third, or fourth life. It's expected. But what about the other 15–20% of the market? Because I feel like every time I open a social media app, I'm seeing someone unbox a pre-owned designer handbag, not a diamond necklace.
And your observation is spot on regarding the momentum of the market. While hard luxury provides the massive billion-dollar bedrock, the explosive acceleration is actually happening in soft luxury.
Like leather goods and apparel.
Specifically leather goods, handbags, and archival apparel. The historical barrier to the secondary market for soft luxury was trust.
Ah, fakes.
Yes. How do you know the bag is real? How do you know the leather isn't damaged in a way the photos hide? But recent advancements in technology and specialized authentication processes have drastically lowered those barriers, allowing the soft luxury segment to sprint and catch up.
Okay, so we have established this 50 billion euro behemoth, heavily anchored by indestructible hard luxury. But with handbags and archival fashion growing at a breakneck speed, that macro view leads us directly into the second phase of our external analysis. the customer study.
Right. Who's actually buying this stuff?
Exactly. We know the money was moving, but we need to understand who is actually wiring the funds. Because if the primary luxury market has traditionally relied on a very specific demographic, often older, highly affluent, established wealth, who is driving this 10% annual growth in the secondary space?
We are witnessing a demographic earthquake. It's truly a shift. The surge in participation from younger cohorts, specifically Generation Z and Millennials, is entirely reshaping the luxury landscape.
It's all the younger buyers.
Completely. To give you a highly specific data point from the front lines, the Real, which is one of the dominant luxury resale platforms in the world, recently reported that their Gen Z user base saw a 35% year-over-year increase in platform visits.
A 35% spike in a single year for one demographic is massive. That isn't just a trend, that's a fundamental behavioral shift.
Is a fundamental rewiring of consumption habits, and it points to a much larger, unavoidable reality for luxury houses. By the year 2030, generations Y, Z, and Alpha will represent nearly 85% of all global luxury purchases.
85%.
Yes. We are talking about digital natives who view the concepts of ownership, utility, and consumption through a completely different lens than their parents or grandparents did.
Which means we really have to dive into their motivations. As if you were to ask someone from an older generation why they might buy something secondhand, the answer would likely be purely economic, right? Like, I couldn't afford it new, so I bought it used.
Like the bargain hunting mindset.
Yeah. But looking at this 35% spike, it clearly cannot be just about hunting for a bargain, can it?
The economic factor is still present, absolutely,
Yeah.
but the psychology surrounding it is vastly more complex. We can segment the modern consumer's motivations into three primary drivers: affordability, investment, and circularity.
Okay, let's tackle affordability first, because we must respect the economic reality of the situation.
Exactly. Nearly 80% of consumers surveyed do cite affordability as a key reason to engage with the secondhand market. However, the nuance is in how they view that affordability. For many aspirational shoppers, it is not simply about saving money, it is a highly deliberate trade-up strategy.
A trade-up strategy. Let's map that out for the listener. So imagine a 24-year-old consumer who has saved $500. In the primary market, that $500 might buy them a brand new handbag from a mid-tier, contemporary, accessible brand.
Right, a nice bag, but not prestige.
Exactly. It's nice, but it doesn't carry the cultural weight of a heritage house. But in the secondary market, that exact same $500 can buy them a pre-owned, top-tier heritage luxury piece.
Exactly. They are actively choosing older prestige over new accessibility.
That makes perfect sense. They are using the resale market as a backdoor access pass into an exclusive ecosystem that they are priced out of at the retail level. They want the heritage logo, they want the craftsmanship, and they are willing to accept, a few scuffs on the leather to get it.
That is exactly the mechanism.
But you mentioned the second driver is investment, which suggests we are dealing with buyers who do have capital.
Oh, the investment driver is where the psychology becomes truly fascinating. And it's heavily influenced by the financialization of everything in the digital age. Consumers, even highly affluent ones, are now actively researching the secondary market resale value of an item before they purchase it brand new in the boutique.
That is wild. It's like checking the Kelley Blue Book depreciation value of a car while you're standing in the dealership showroom before you even sign the lease.
It's even more extreme than that, honestly, because a car inherently depreciates the moment its tires touch the public road. With certain luxury goods, the consumer is checking to see if the item will actually appreciate. Yeah. There is robust historical data showing that highly coveted, structurally scarce items like the Hermes Birkin bag have historically generated an average annual return of 14.2%.
Wait, 14.2%. That outpaces gold.
It does.
In many historical multi-year windows, that outpaces the S&P 500.
It absolutely does. And the modern consumer is acutely aware of this. They're beginning to treat their physical closets as diversified, liquid asset portfolios.
A wearable portfolio.
Exactly. The thought process is no longer just, do I love this jacket? The thought process is, if I allocate $3,000 of my capital to this handbag today, can I liquidate it on a resale platform for $2,500 in 18 months when I want to cycle my wardrobe? The perceived cost of ownership drops dramatically when you factor in the resale value.
It's the gamification of the wardrobe. You aren't spending money. You are basically parking capital in a wearable asset.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we have the aspirational buyer trading up and the affluent buyer treating luxury as a liquid asset. What about the third driver you mentioned? Circularity.
Circularity and sustainability are profound motivators, particularly for the youngest demographic cohorts. The global consumer is experiencing acute climate anxiety. A recent comprehensive report by McKinsey noted that recirculating garments, specifically achieving a metric where 1 in 5 garments is kept in active circulation rather than discarded, is vital if the broader apparel industry hopes to meet its emission and climate goals.
So we have a generation that is hyper aware of the devastating environmental impact of fast fashion, the water consumption of textile manufacturing, and the carbon footprint of global shipping.
Exactly, they know the stats.
But simultaneously, they are young, they love fashion, and they want the dopamine hit of expressing their identity through a new outfit.
Precisely the paradox they face. And the secondhand luxury market offers the perfect psychological loophole. Buying a pre-loved, high-quality luxury item allows them to actively participate in the joy of fashion consumption without the guilt of contributing to the production of new raw materials.
It is the ultimate guilt-free consumption model.
It really is.
I see the appeal. But taking all three of these motivations together, affordability, investment, circularity, I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of the heritage brand.
Okay, lay it on it.
Let's say 80% of these secondary market participants are driven by affordability. Are they actually luxury clients? Or are they just tourists in the luxury ecosystem? I mean, if a consumer can only afford a 10-year-old heavily used wallet, why should the CEO of the primary brand spend a single second caring about them? They aren't contributing to this quarter's revenue.
That is the exact friction point, and it is the precise debate echoing in luxury boardrooms globally right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the traditional old guard view was exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
Luxury is exclusionary by design.
Right.
If you cannot afford the entry price of a new item, you are simply not our client, and we do not cater to you. But the strategic mindset is rapidly evolving, driven by long-term customer lifetime value models.
How so?
Consider the life cycle of the consumer. That 22-year-old college graduate buying a scuffed secondhand wallet today might be a tourist in terms of current purchasing power. But in 10 or 15 years, that individual might be a high-earning corporate executive, a successful entrepreneur, or part of a dual-income household.
They age into the wealth.
Exactly. If you ignore them now or treat their entry point as illegitimate, you lose them later. The resale market is effectively the new, massive top of the funnel for customer acquisition.
It's planting seeds. You let the secondary market hook them on the aesthetic and the quality, banking on the fact that as their income scales, they will eventually transition to the primary boutiques.
Precisely.
And this brings up a fascinating cultural shift. I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, there was a palpable stigma attached to wearing used clothes. It implied you were struggling. But that stigma seems to have completely evaporated.
It hasn't just evaporated, it has inverted. It had been replaced by the prestige of the archive.
The archive. I see that word everywhere now.
Yeah. Wearing a meticulously sourced jacket from a designer's critically acclaimed 2005 fall collection is no longer viewed as wearing a hand-me-down. In today's cultural currency, it is viewed as a massive flex of deep fashion knowledge.
It signals that you aren't just a passive consumer buying whatever is in the store window. You are a curator. You are an insider who understands the history of the house.
The rebranding of used goods into pre-loved, vintage, and archival is honestly one of the greatest marketing masterclasses of the 21st century.
It really is.
And this entire psychological shift, the desire for archival pieces, the checking of investment values, has fundamentally broken the traditional way people shop for luxury.
Yeah.
We need to dissect the RPO model.
The RPO model. Research online, purchase offline.
Yes, that was the bedrock of modern luxury retail strategy for the last decade. The premise was simple. A consumer would see a beautiful timepiece on a brand's Instagram. They would read an in-depth review on a horology blog, and they would check the specifications on the brand's official website.
But ultimately, when it came time to spend $10,000, they wanted the physical sensory experience.
Exactly. They wanted to walk into the marble-floored boutique, be handed a glass of champagne, receive white glove service, and walk out with a heavy branded shopping bag.
But the secondary market has completely hijacked that journey, hasn't it?
Oh, it has mutated the RPO model into a bizarre hybrid beast that is incredibly frustrating for brick-and-mortar retail directors. Now, the consumer behavior often looks like this. The client researches the item and the primary retail price is online. They book an appointment at the flagship boutique.
Okay.
They drink the champagne. They speak with a sales associate. They physically try on the watch to see how the 40-millimeter case sits on their specific wrist, or they try on the jacket to check the exact shoulder fit. And then they politely thank the associate, leave the store empty-handed, pull out their smartphone on the sidewalk, open a resale app, and purchase the exact same item or last season's nearly identical iteration on the secondary market for 20 to 30% less.
That is brutal. They are actively using the multi-million-dollar, architecturally stunning flagship physical stores as a free fitting room to subsidize their secondhand online purchases.
Free fitting rooms and free champagne.
Yeah. The brand is absorbing all the overhead costs of the retail experience. The rent, the staff salaries, the inventory holding costs, and the third-party resale platform is reaping the revenue.
Which serves as the perfect transition into the next phase of our external analysis, the competitors and the M&A landscape. Because the heritage brands were initially too proud, too protective, or too operationally inflexible to touch used goods, a massive, highly capitalized ecosystem of third-party competitors sprang up to service this multi-billion-dollar demand.
And this ecosystem operates entirely outside the walled gardens of the heritage brands. We are talking about major tech-driven platforms that have achieved household name status in a remarkably short time.
Yeah, platforms everyone knows now.
You have The Real in the US, Vestiaire Collective dominating Europe and expanding globally, Farfetch, My Teresa, and specialized platforms like Chrono24 for watches. And it's not even just the polished tech platforms, right?
There's a whole other layer.
You have this chaotic, highly lucrative subculture of peer-to-peer live streams on social media platforms where independent sellers hold up luxury bags to a smartphone camera and auction them off to thousands of viewers in real time.
It is the Wild West of commerce. But the critical development for our strategy case study is that these third-party platforms are no longer just surviving on venture capital fumes, they are maturing, and they are figuring out the brutal mathematics of the business model.
Which was always the big question mark.
Yeah, exactly. Let's look closely at the real. For years, the prevailing business narrative was that luxury resale was a brilliant concept, but an inherently flawed business model.
Because of the unit economics, right?
Exactly, the unit economics. Think about the logistics. In a traditional primary retail model, a brand manufactures 10,000 identical black leather wallets. They photograph one wallet, write one product description, and push the inventory to their global distribution centers. The cost of processing each unit is fractions of a cent.
Because it's a cookie-cutter process. But in the resale model, every single item is a unique STOQ.
Every single item requires an individual human touch. If someone sends a box to the Real containing a used T-shirt, a human being has to open the box, physically inspect the shirt for stains, verify its authenticity, measure it, steam it, photograph it on a mannequin, write a unique condition report, and inventory it.
That sounds incredibly labor-intensive.
It is. The labor cost to process a $30 used T-shirt completely wipes out the $10 commission the platform might make. The more low-value items they processed, the more money they burned.
So how did they survive? You mentioned they recently hit a massive milestone.
They pivoted aggressively. In 2024, the Real finally turned profitable, hitting an adjusted EBITDA of $9 million.
Wow. EBITDA, so earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right. And in the context of the cash-burning resale world, achieving positive EBITDA is a miraculous proof of concept.
So how did they fix the broken math?
They realized that the operational cost, the labor of the authenticator and the photographer is relatively fixed, whether they are processing a $30 T-shirt or a $3,000 handbag. But the margin on the handbag is exponential. So they stopped accepting low-value items entirely. They pivoted their entire acquisition strategy to mid to high-value items pieces valued over $100, but prioritizing the thousands, and they returned to their core consignment routes, altering their commission structures to reward high-value sellers.
They cracked the operational code. And the moment these platforms prove they can be profitable, they transition from being a nuisance to being either a highly attractive acquisition target or a lethal threat to the heritage brands.
Exactly.
Which raises the massive strategic question for the luxury conglomerates. Is indirect involvement the safest play? Are the major players using M&A mergers and acquisitions and venture capital as a way to play in the dirt without getting their white gloves soiled?
The indirect channel strategy is playing out aggressively right now, and billions of dollars are being deployed. The major luxury conglomerates are placing calculated, massive bets across the board.
Yeah, cool.
For example, Richemont, the Swiss conglomerate that owns prestigious hard luxury houses like Cartier, Vacheron Constantin, and IWC, outright acquired Watchfinder, a massive pre-owned watch platform. They bought the infrastructure to capture the pre-owned market.
And what about the soft luxury side?
Kering, the powerhouse conglomerate behind Gucci, Balenciaga, and Saint Laurent, took a strategic 5% stake in Vestiaire Collective. Farfetch, before its recent restructuring, acquired L'Occlusive, which is a B2B resale technology platform that helps other businesses manage pre-owned inventory.
It's everywhere.
Even retail behemoths outside traditional luxury are making plays. Amazon recently partnered with What Goes Around. Comes around to sell authenticated, pre-owned luxury accessories directly on the Amazon storefront.
Let's analyze this proxy war because that's what it feels like. By investing in these third-party platforms rather than building their own internal resale infrastructure from scratch, aren't the brands fundamentally outsourcing their relationship with the customer?
It's a huge risk, yeah.
I mean, if a 25-year-old buys their first Gucci bag on Vestiaire Collective, Vestiaire owns that customer's email address, their physical shipping address, their credit card data, and their browsing history. Kering, despite owning Gucci, knows absolutely nothing about that specific individual. Are they essentially letting tech companies monopolize the data of their future VIP clients?
It is a profound, calculated risk, and your observation strikes at the very heart of the luxury data wars.
Yeah.
Client data, knowing who buys what, when, and for how much, is the ultimate luxury asset today.
So why do these M&A and venture deals look so attractive to the boards of Kering or Richemont despite that loss?
Because they allow the heritage brands to accomplish three distinct strategic goals simultaneously.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, they get to participate financially in the profits of a €50 billion market. If Vestiaire succeeds, Kering's equity stake appreciates. Second, while they may not get the granular email address of a specific buyer, they gain access to massive macro-level consumer data.
Ah, the big picture data.
Right. Through their board seats or partnership agreements, Kering can see macro trends. They can see exactly which specific Gucci archival bag from 1998 is suddenly spiking in search volume in the Tokyo market. That data is invaluable for informing their new primary production designs.
That makes a lot of sense. They use the resale market as an incredibly accurate, real-time trend forecasting engine. And the third goal?
The third goal is risk mitigation. By using platforms as a proxy, they get to observe the chaotic dynamics of the secondary market without risking direct brand dilution. If a platform accidentally authenticates a fake bag, or if a shipment is lost, the consumer directs their anger at the platform. The platform takes the PR hit, the negative reviews, and the customer service nightmare.
And the heritage brand's pristine name remains untouched.
Exactly.
It's a strategic buffer zone. They get the macro data and the financial upside, but they outsource the operational headaches and the reputational risk, which brings us perfectly inside the heavily guarded walls of the luxury houses themselves. Let's pivot our framework to Section 4, internal factors, and what I like to call the brand dilemma.
The boardroom panic.
Exactly, because we've seen how massive the market is, and we've seen how the third-party platforms are profiting off century-old heritage. This reality creates an immense amount of internal friction among the executives who are tasked with protecting the brand. Why have these brands been so historically resistant to just opening up a beautifully designed archive or used goods counter in the back of their flagship boutiques? What are they so afraid of?
The fears are deeply ingrained in the culture of luxury management, and frankly, they are not entirely unjustified based on the old models of retail. There are three primary existential fires paralyzing these brands. The first is cannibalization.
The fear of stealing from your own cash register.
Exactly. The logic goes like this. Suppose a loyal client walks into a boutique with a budget of $3,000. Currently, you offer them a brand new seasonal handbag for $3,000. But if you also offer them a slightly larger, culturally significant, pre-owned archival bag for that same $3,000, they might choose the pre-owned one.
And you haven't made a new sale.
Right. You haven't increased your revenue. You've simply traded a high-margin primary sale for a lower-margin secondary sale. You've cannibalized your own core business.
That makes sense on a spreadsheet, definitely. What is the second fear?
The second fear is the loss of exclusivity and the erosion of pricing power. Luxury is fundamentally built on the illusion of scarcity and untouchability. You pay a premium because not everyone can have it. If anyone with an internet connection can jump online and buy your product used for a fraction of the original price, does the brand lose its aura?
Ubiquity is the death of luxury.
Exactly. If everyone have one, the true high net worth client no longer wants one.
The brand becomes common. And once a luxury brand becomes common, it is incredibly difficult, almost impossible, to claw back that prestige. And the third fear?
The third fear is purely operational, and it's the one that keeps chief operating officers awake at night. The nightmare of reverse logistics and the terror of counterfeits.
Oh, reverse logistics.
Yeah. As we discussed with the Real, luxury brands are perfectly optimized forward-moving machines. They are built to manufacture 10,000 identical items in Italy and seamlessly distribute them to boutiques in New York, Dubai, and Shanghai. They're absolutely not built to receive 10,000 unique, used, potentially damaged items back from consumers.
They don't have the infrastructure to clean them, photograph them, price them dynamically based on market wear and tear, and resell them.
They lack both the physical infrastructure and the software to manage it at scale. But the darkest aspect of this operational fear is the counterfeit threat. Counterfeit manufacturing has evolved from cheap knockoffs sold on street corners to highly sophisticated superfakes.
Right, superfakes that use the real materials.
Yes, produced in clandestine factories using the exact same leathers and hardware as the real items. Imagine the apocalyptic PR scenario. If a heritage brand, through its own official in-house resale program, accidentally authenticates and sells a superfake to a loyal client.
Oh, wow. That would entirely destroy the core promise of the brand. Trust. If you can't trust the brand to know its own product, the illusion shatters. So I completely understand the paralysis, the cannibalization, the loss of exclusivity, the operational nightmare, the fake bags. It's a minefield.
It really is.
But let's look at the reality we uncovered during the external factors study. The reality is that the products are being sold anyway. The market is hitting 50 billion euros, whether the brand participates or not. And this brings up a massive counter-argument to the fear of cannibalization. We mentioned the BCG survey earlier. 66% of respondents explicitly stated that the resale market enabled them to discover or buy a brand for the very first time.
That is the pivotal data point. Two-thirds of the buyers in the secondary market are completely new to the brand. They are not cannibalizing primary sales because they were never going to buy a new item at retail price anyway.
So by staying completely out of the market in a misguided attempt to protect their brand, aren't the luxury houses actually surrendering control? Because the transactions are happening.
They're absolutely surrendering control.
If you refuse to participate, you lose total control over how your items are displayed on these third-party websites. You lose control of the dynamic pricing, you lose control of the lighting in the photographs, the descriptions, the narratives surrounding your own archives. You are essentially letting a tech startup in Silicon Valley dictate the historical narrative of your Parisian fashion house.
That specific realization is what finally turns the tide in the boardroom debates. Executives realize that the risk of inaction is now demonstrably higher than the risk of participation. This leads to the understanding of the dual nature of luxury resale.
The dual nature.
Yes. On one end, it serves as an incredibly potent entry point for aspirational consumers. It is a self-funding marketing and acquisition channel. But crucially, and this addresses the cannibalization fear, it also serves as a powerful retention tool for a brand's most affluent, high-spending consumers.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. How does facilitating the sale of used goods help retain billionaires?
It comes down to utility and liquidity. Even the most highly affluent consumers, the individuals buying haute couture, have limited physical closet space and a desire for novelty. If a brand provides a seamless, discreet, white-glove service for their top-tier VIP clients to liquidate their out-of-season items, like sending a concierge to their home to pack up the items, authenticating them internally and selling them, the brand solves a pain point for the client.
They act as a closet management service.
Exactly. And more importantly, they provide the client with liquidity, usually in the form of elevated store credit. The client clears out their closet and suddenly has $20,000 in store credit. What do they do with it? They turn around and immediately fund new first-hand purchases from the current season's collection.
Oh, that's brilliant.
The brand has essentially manufactured liquidity to drive primary sales, keeping the client's wealth entirely locked inside the brand's own ecosystem.
My mind immediately goes to classic business theory here. If we look at the business model innovation framework, popularized by theorists like Johnson, Christensen, and Kagerman, we frequently discuss the classic blades and razor model.
Right, the classic Gillette example.
Yeah, Gillette practically gives away the razor handle for a loss, knowing they will make a recurring, high-margin profit selling you the replacement blades for the rest of your life. Apple does this by getting you into the ecosystem with an iPhone and then selling you high-margin software, storage, and accessories.
He's one of the most durable business models in modern commerce.
But looking at this dynamic, could a luxury brand successfully deploy a reverse blades and razor model here? Let's theorize this. Could a brand intentionally use the in-house resale market as the cheap blade to hook a new consumer? You allow the aspirational 24-year-old to buy a relatively inexpensive, heavily worn, pre-owned wallet directly from your website. You might only break even on that transaction due to the operational costs. But the transaction isn't about the profit of the wallet, it's about data acquisition.
You capture their verified data into your CRM.
Exactly. You capture their email, their address, their sizing, you bring them into the walled garden, you start sending them the beautiful, glossy, seasonal catalogs, you invite them to the entry-level boutique events, you build absolute brand loyalty. And then, over the next decade, as their career progresses and their disposable income grows, you systematically upgrade them. You transition them from the low-margin blade of the used wallet to the high-margin razor. The $5,000 brand new boutique purchase, the ready-to-wear clothing, the fine jewelry.
It is a brilliant, highly sophisticated application of the framework. In this model, the resale division isn't viewed as a standalone profit center that needs to generate massive margins. Instead, it is viewed as a self-liquidating customer acquisition channel. It is a loss leader that feeds the highly profitable primary retail engine over a 10 to 20-year customer lifetime horizon.
And arriving at that realization brings us directly to the climax of our case study. We have traversed the external landscape, the massive 50 billion euro market size, the shifting, complex psychology of the Gen Z and millennial consumer, the aggressive rise of third-party platforms, and the strategic proxy wars of M&A.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. And we've also dissected the internal paralysis, the valid fears of cannibalization, brand dilution, and operational nightmares, weighed against the immense potential for customer acquisition and retention. So it is time to answer the central question we posed at the very beginning of this deep dive. Should luxury brands enter the secondhand market?
Based on the totality of the strategic evidence, the answer is definitively, unequivocally yes. They simply cannot afford to sit paralyzed on the sidelines while a 50 billion euro market scales toward $300 billion. The macroeconomic shift is too profound to ignore. But, exactly, as in all complex business strategy, saying yes is the easy part. The real strategic puzzle isn't if they should enter, it's how.
Because entering the market isn't a binary switch. There is a vast spectrum of strategic options, ranging from keeping the secondary market at arm's length to bringing the entire operation right into the heart of the flagship boutique.
Exactly. Let's outline this strategic spectrum of entry. On the most conservative end, we have the light touch approach, which revolves entirely around strategic partnerships. For example, forward-thinking brands like Stella McCartney and even behemoths like Gucci have engaged in official partnerships with The Real.
How does that work?
The structure is quite elegant. The brand offers exclusive perks, such as a $100 store credit voucher or a private VIP shopping appointment, to any consumer who consigns their used Stella or Gucci items on the Real platform.
So in this scenario, the heritage brand never physically touches the used item. They don't have to authenticate it, clean it, or ship it. They simply use their marketing power to incentivize the customer to keep the circular economy moving on a trusted third-party platform.
Right.
And the genius part is the reward, the store credit, drives foot traffic back into the primary boutique. It's a remarkably clean, closed loop.
It is very clean. It requires virtually zero capital expenditure to set up, and it carries incredibly low operational risk. However, the downside is that you still do not own the end consumer data of whoever buys the used item.
You're still blind to the buyer.
Right. Moving further along the spectrum toward integration, we find the in-house niche approach. This is where brands decide to internalize the resale process, but they do it on a highly curated, small, and strictly controlled scale. Ralph Lauren provides a fascinating case study here.
What are they doing?
They sell highly curated, deeply historical vintage pieces directly alongside their new collections. We are talking about sourcing pristine 1990s polar bear sweaters or original 1992 stadium collection caps and selling them for hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars on their official site.
But how do they physically do that? Ralph Lauren isn't asking average consumers to mail in their old hats.
No, they utilize specialized internal archiving teams and partner with elite vintage curators to scour global markets, auctions, and private collections to source these specific narrative pieces. It's curation, not mass consignment.
I love that.
Another brilliant example of the in-house niche is Rimowa, the luxury luggage manufacturer owned by LVMH. they launched the Recrafted program. The mechanics are brilliant. You trade in your heavily used, beat-up aluminum Rimowa suitcase. You receive store credit.
Okay, standard trade-in.
But then Rimowa's own artisans take that dented suitcase, and they don't try to make it look brand new. They repair the functional elements like the wheels and locks, but they leave the dents and scratches. They clean it, authenticate it, and resell it as a distinct, patented product that tells a story of global travel.
That is incredible product positioning. They turn the damage, the wear and tear into the actual value proposition. They are selling the romance of travel.
Exactly. And LVMH is doing this on the B2B side as well, right?
Oh, yes, Nonasource.
Yes. LVMH launched Nonasource, which is a brilliant sustainability play. It's a B2B platform that takes the dead stock, leftover luxury fabrics from houses like Dior or Givenchy and resells them at a discount to young, independent fashion designers.
So all of these in-house niche examples, Ralph Lauren, Rimowa, Nonasource, they're all ways for a brand to dip a toe in the water. They get to test the operational logistics of reverse supply chains, refurbishments, and secondary pricing without having to convert their entire Fifth Avenue flagship store into a mass thrift shop.
Allows them to build the operational muscle memory in a safe environment. But then, on the absolute far end of the integration spectrum, we have full integration. And the undisputed gold standard for this approach right now is Rolex and their certified pre-owned program.
I remember when this was announced, it felt like a massive earthquake in the horology world. This secondary watch market was dominated by gray market dealers, and suddenly the king of the industry stepped onto the battlefield. Walk us through the exact mechanics of the Rolex CPO program.
It was a paradigm-shifting maneuver. Rolex authorized a system where their official authorized retail dealers can sell pre-owned Rolex watches. But there are strict operational rules. The watch must be at least 3 years old to prevent immediate flipping of new models.
Smart.
The dealer acquires the watch from a client. The watch is then sent to Rolex or evaluated by heavily vetted Rolex-trained watchmakers on site. It is opened, authenticated down to the individual screws, fully serviced using official parts, polished, and then, this is the critical part, it is issued a specialized certified pre-owned wax seal and a 2-year international guarantee backed directly by Rolex Geneva.
That 2-year guarantee completely vaporizes any anxiety the consumer might have about buying a used mechanical instrument for $15,000. Rolex has entirely co-opted the secondary market by leveraging the one thing a third-party platform can never offer: factory-backed peace of mind.
Exactly, they won on trust.
So, looking at this vast landscape, evaluating the options from the light touch partnerships to the curated in-house niche all the way to full integration like Rolex, what is our ultimate strategy recommendation for a major luxury house operating today? What should they do tomorrow?
We recommend a highly strategic, dual-pronged hybrid strategy. A brand must navigate 2 distinct fronts simultaneously because consumer behavior dictates it.
Okay, what's the first prong?
First, on the broad multi-brand front, luxury conglomerates must continue to aggressively utilize M&A and venture investments to capture the platform market. Why? Because a massive segment of consumers inherently prefers the platform experience. They go to a site like Vestiaire Collective because they want variety. They want to style a pre-owned Prada skirt with a vintage Chanel jacket and a pair of current season Gucci loafers.
A single brand can't replicate that.
Exactly. A single brand cannot replicate that multi-brand treasure hunt discovery experience on their own website. Therefore, invest in those platforms, reap the financial dividends of the aggregator model, and aggressively harvest the macro consumer data to inform your own trends.
Let the tech platforms do what tech platforms do best: aggregate massive amounts of chaotic supply and demand and take a toll on the transaction.
Precisely. But the second prong of the strategy is where the true brand defense lies. The brand must simultaneously build a tightly controlled, fully internalized, brand-led resale program specifically for their most iconic, high-value core products.
Define core products in this context.
You do not build a reverse logistics chain to take back last season's novelty logo t-shirt. You build the infrastructure to take back your version of the Hermes Birkin, the Rolex Submariner, the Burbridge trenchcoat, the Cartier Love bracelet. You focus entirely on the timeless, high-ticket items that define your heritage. You buy them back from your clients, you authenticate them in-house, you use your own artisans to meticulously restore them, and you sell them on your own website or in dedicated boutique annexes as premium archive pieces. This allows you to protect your brand equity, dictate the secondary market pricing floor for your most important items, and most importantly, own the data of the client buying the archive piece.
Okay, strategically, I love this hybrid model. It covers all the bases, but I have to push back here on the reality of execution.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's look at the Rolex example again. If I am Rolex, I have the operational muscle to authenticate a watch. A watch is made of metal, it has laser-etched serial numbers, it has specific calibers and escapements that are nearly impossible to perfectly clone. The authentication process is highly objective.
Very true.
But if I am a mid-sized heritage fashion house, isn't authenticating thousands of five-year-old silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, or leather belts an absolute operational nightmare? Wear and tear on fabric is highly subjective. The supply chains for leather vary. How do you possibly scale a soft luxury in-house resale program without drowning in logistical chaos and subjective arguments with clients over the condition of a bag?
Your pushback highlights the exact friction point where lofty boardroom strategy meets the brutal reality of warehouse execution. A brilliant strategy, beautifully formatted on a PowerPoint slide, is just a piece of paper unless you can actually operationalize it. Which brings us to the final and most critical section of our case study, Section 6, the implementation plan.
Yes, how to actually do it.
To build this in-house brand-led retail program without suffocating under the weight of reverse logistics, we cannot just tweak a few job descriptions. We have to fundamentally re-engineer the company. To do this, we're going to apply a classic, highly effective organizational design framework, Galbraith's STAR model.
The STAR model. I love this framework because it brutally exposes the flaw in so many corporate transformations. It proves that you cannot just announce a new strategy and expect the company to magically execute it. You can't just send an all-staff email saying, hey, we sell used bags now, and expect the retail staff to know what to do. The anatomy of the company has to change.
Exactly. J. Galbraith's STAR model posits that for an organization to execute a complex new strategy effectively, 5 distinct organizational design elements must be perfectly aligned: strategy, structure, processes, rewards, and people. If even one point of this STAR is out of alignment, the human behavior won't change, the logistics will fail, and the initiative will collapse.
All right, let's walk through how a luxury house must align these 5 points to survive the resale revolution. Let's start at the very top of the STAR. Strategy. We've talked a lot about the what, but how does the internal definition of strategy need to shift?
The strategy node requires a fundamental, almost philosophical shift in the corporate mindset. The entire luxury industry has operated on a linear mindset for centuries: produce, sell, and forget. The new strategy must dictate a circular mindset: produce, sell, buy back, refurbish, and resell.
A complete 180.
Yes. Furthermore, the internal metrics for success must shift. The primary goals of this archival strategy are customer acquisition, long-term client retention, and brand equity protection, not necessarily immediate, high-margin quarterly profit from the resale division itself.
Okay, the mindset is shifted, the goals are redefined. We move to the second point of the STAR, structure. Where does this massive new operational undertaking live on the corporate org chart? Do you just hand this off to the current director of retail and say, figure out the used bags too?
Giving this responsibility to the existing primary retail division is a guaranteed recipe for disaster. The current retail team's KPIs, their bonuses, their promotions, are entirely focused on moving brand new seasonal inventory at full margin. If you ask them to also sell used items, they will view it as a distraction or a threat.
So what's the structural solution?
Our recommendation for structure is to carve out a dedicated cross-functional archive and circularity division. This division must have its own dedicated leadership and, crucially, its own distinct profit and loss statement, so its initial setup costs don't drag down the primary retail metrics.
That makes total sense. They need to be insulated.
Furthermore, this new division must sit centrally, with direct communication lines to manufacturing, to source original hardware and fabrics for refurbishment, and to retail, to train boutiques on how to source these items from VIP clients.
They need the breathing room to build the reverse logistics infrastructure. Which brings us to the third point of the STAR, and arguably the most complex: processes. This addresses my fear about authenticating the 5-year-old silk shirts. How do we build physical and digital processes to handle these items at scale?
This is where modern technology bridges the gap between the physical product and digital efficiency. The absolute first process a brand must implement is the integration of digital product passports into their primary manufacturing line immediately. We are already seeing visionary brands like Chloe and Coach pioneering this space.
Break down the mechanics of a digital product passport for the listener. What is it physically?
The digital product passport is essentially a secure, unalterable digital identity for a physical item, typically backed by blockchain technology. Physically, it takes the form of a tiny encrypted NFC chip near field communication that is permanently woven into the lining of a handbag or the hem of a garment at the exact moment of primary manufacture.
Similar to the chip in a modern credit card or smartphone.
Exactly. And the moment that bag rolls off the artisan's bench in Italy, that chip is loaded with data. The exact date of manufacture, the specific tannery the leather came from, the artisan who stitched it, and eventually, the initial point of sale. So fast forward 5 years. The client brings that bag back to the boutique for the resale program. The authentication process is no longer a manual, highly subjective, hour-long nightmare where an employee is peering at stitching under a magnifying glass trying to spot a superfake.
They just scan it.
Exactly. The employee simply taps a specialized smartphone against the lining of the bag. The NFC chip pings the secure blockchain, and the exact unalterable provenance of the item appears on the screen. You know instantly, with absolute mathematical certainty, that it is real, when it was sold, and what materials were used.
That is revolutionary. It completely eliminates the counterfeit fear in an instant. It turns a subjective debate into an objective digital handshake. But what about pricing? That's another massive process hurdle.
Yes. The second critical process they must build is a dynamic pricing algorithm. In primary retail, the brand acts as dictator. They set the price of a bag at $3,000, and that is the price. But in the secondary market, they are competing in a highly liquid, floating market. They need to build or license automated software processes that constantly scrape real-time pricing data from platforms like the RealReal and Vestiaire Collective.
Right, to ensure they aren't overpaying the client during the buyback or overpricing the item when they resell it.
Correct. They need an algorithm that says a black leather tote from 2021 in good condition is currently trading at $1,800 on the open market. We'll offer the client $1,400 in cash or $1,700 in store credit, and we will list our refurbished, brand-authenticated version for $2,100. They have to maintain market competitiveness while commanding a slight premium for the brand-authenticated guarantee.
All right, so we have the strategy, the structure, and the tech-driven processes. Now we arrive at the fourth point of the star, which often makes or breaks human execution: rewards. How do we incentivize the desired behavior? Because let's look at the reality on the boutique floor. If a highly trained sales associate makes a 5% commission on selling a brand new $3,000 bag, but they make zero commission for spending an hour helping a client trade in an old bag, they are never, ever going to mention the circular program. Human nature dictates they will follow the money.
The compensation structure absolutely dictates the reality on the retail floor. You have to align the incentives of two distinct groups, the client and the staff. First, you reward the client. As we mentioned, you offer them the option of cash, but you heavily incentivize store credit with a kicker.
Right, give them more value and credit.
If the algorithmic value of their old bag is $1,000 in cash, you offer them $1,200 or $1,300 in store credit. Fashionphile pioneered this brilliantly through their partnership with Neiman Marcus. The client feels like they're gaining free money, and the brand ensures the capital is locked inside their ecosystem, almost guaranteeing a primary retail purchase.
And for the sales associates, how do we rewire their motivation?
You must fundamentally alter their commission structure. Sales associates should be paid commissions not just on outbound sales, but on successful inbound consignments. Imagine a scenario where a dedicated sales associate contacts a VIP client and says, "I know you have 3 bags for the 2018 collection that you haven't worn. Let me come to your house, pack them up, and process them."
Okay, proactive sourcing.
If the brand buys back $10,000 worth of archive pieces from that client, the sales associate should receive a percentage commission on that acquisition.
That is a brilliant psychological flip. You turn your traditional sales force into a highly motivated, decentralized network of inventory sourcers. They are now buyers, not just sellers.
Exactly. And when that VIP client uses their $10,000 in store credit to buy the new seasonal jewelry, the associate gets a commission on that sale as well. You align their financial success entirely with the circularity of the client's wardrobe.
Which leads us to the final critical point of Galbraith's STAR model: people. You cannot execute a tech-heavy, algorithmic, restoration-based strategy with a talent pool composed solely of traditional retail managers and marketing creatives, can you?
No, the HR profile of the brand must expand significantly. You need to hire an entirely new breed of talent that luxury houses historically never recruited. First, until the digital product passports fully saturate the market over the next decade, you need to hire elite authenticators with deep, almost forensic historical knowledge of your archives to process the legacy items.
Right, the human element is still needed for older pieces.
Second, you need restoration artisans. Not just cobblers who can fix a broken heel, but highly trained craftspeople who understand the chemistry of leather. They need to know how to take a scratched, dry leather bag and restore its moisture and color so it looks beautifully patinated and loved, rather than just hastily repaired.
And on the digital side?
Crucially, you need to hire elite data scientists. You need quantitative analysts who understand secondary market pricing curves, arbitrage, and predictive analytics. They need to be able to forecast which current seasonal items are likely to hold their value over a 5-year horizon, feeding that data back to the design and merchandising teams.
So applying Galbraith's STAR model, we haven't just bolted a used goods tab onto a website. We have completely rewired the DNA of the organization. We've established a circular strategy, built an insulated archival structure, embedded NFC chips and pricing algorithms for processes, created buyback commissions for rewards, and hired data scientists and artisans. This isn't just a marketing gimmick to look sustainable, it is a profound, incredibly difficult operational transformation.
It is the only way a heritage brand can successfully internalize a complex market that they previously ignored. It requires massive heavy lifting, immense capital investment, and a willingness to disrupt their own legacy operations. But consider the alternative.
The $300 billion threat.
Exactly. The alternative is ceding the future of your brand's narrative and tens of billions of dollars in revenue to third-party tech platforms that view your heritage simply as a commodity to be traded.
It truly is an adapt or die moment for the industry, hidden behind the glamorous veneer of high fashion and runway shows. This has been an incredibly illuminating deep dive. We have traversed a massive landscape today, from the macro billions of global market sizing and the shifting psychology of the Gen Z consumer, down to the proxy wars of corporate M&A, the internal boardroom paralysis, and finally, the micro-level commission incentives of a retail sales associate.
It is a vast, complex puzzle, but seeing how these disparate pieces interlock really reveals the undeniable future of retail. And to leave you, the listener, with a final slightly provocative thought to mull over as you digest all of this strategy,
Go for it.
think about the trajectory we've discussed. As digital product passports become the absolute norm in manufacturing, and as physical luxury goods begin to act more and more like traceable, liquid financial assets complete with yield tracking, authenticity blockchain ledgers, and predictable depreciation curves.
Yeah.
Will luxury fashion houses eventually be forced to operate less like traditional retailers producing seasonal art and more like boutique investment banks, actively managing the lifelong wearable asset portfolios sitting inside their clients' closets?
Thank you for listening. The Luxury Retail Market Podcast was written and produced by Robert Gutierrez Jr., a researcher and strategist at Luxury Retail Market. For deeper research, independent analysis, and long-form insights on the luxury retail industry, visit luxuryretailmarket.org. Subscribe to the show and consider supporting our mission of advancing the future of luxury retail through education, research, and collaboration. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed.